You guys, avoid seller's remorse. It's one of the worst things. It's worse than buyer's remorse because once it's gone, it's gone. You can't get it back. And unless you look on the pre-loved market, you might be paying a premium and it's not going to be the same. It's really not. So make sure you watch this video if you want to avoid seller's remorse. Now, in today's video, I'm going to show you a few bags that I have almost sold. And I will say that I have sold many bags in my collection in the past. And again, I've sold them through consignment stores, and they're just local consignment stores. They're not any of the big fashion files or whatever. And so it was just something that I did to kind of cleanse myself and get rid of bags I knew I wasn't wearing anymore. And a lot of them are contemporary bags. And I did that many, many years ago. And now that I have a much more curated collection in the last several years, I have considered selling a few bags. And I'm going to show you the ones that I almost sold. And in retrospect, when I look back on it, I am so glad I never sold them because I would have had such regret if I did. And the first one, I'm having such difficulty with microphones because they're so heavy and I don't wear like stiff clothing, like blouses. This is a silk blouse. So it really does not hold onto my clothing. So I had to put this Farfetch tag in my shirt to help stabilize it, but it keeps moving around. So if you see it sticking out, that is why. Okay, let's see how that works, but it's not doing anything for my blouse. Anyway, so the first bag, I'm ashamed to say, was my black Chanel classic flap in the medium size, gold hardware, caviar leather. And at the time, I hadn't worn this in a few years. So I was like, oh my God, the prices are like crazy. At that point, the prices were absolutely crazy, so I thought. Today, it's even like off the charts, nutso. But I did consider selling this because I was like, okay, if I'm not wearing it and the prices are so crazy, then I might as well get my money back and then some. And so I really considered selling this. And I remember looking on the pre-loved market and it's just saturated. If you go on the pre-loved market, you can 100% find a black classic flap medium size. There are so many, whether it's vintage or new, you're gonna find so many. And I was like, oh, well, the market's so saturated with this. And so I wasn't really in a hurry to sell it or anything. And I am so glad I didn't. So first of all, I bought this when it was $4,900 US. And that was a time where it was pretty static at that price point. It was either 48 or 4,900, I can't remember. But the price hadn't moved in like quite a few years. And then after I bought this, sometime after I bought it, then the prices, like they were doing price increases like twice a year, 3 times a year or something stupid like that. So, so I bought this at sort of the lower price point, as stupid as that might sound. And I'm so glad I didn't sell this because then I just kind of sat on it. I was like, whatever, I'm not in a rush to sell it. And I just fell in love with it again. And then I started wearing this much more and I really enjoyed wearing it. And I felt like it did something to my outfits that some of my other bags couldn't do. And so it really did fill this weird void, even though it's just a black bag with gold hardware. And I honestly love how good it looks with, you know, so many outfits. And for me, I can wear it crossbody even though it's quite high. I kind of like that look sometimes. And so I'm so glad I never sold this. This is such a beautiful bag. This is a lifer for me for sure. And I don't know what I was thinking. I think we all go through these seasons of wearing a bag for a certain period of time and then we put it away and we just don't wear it for a while. And that could be a few months or that could be a year or that could even be like 2 years or more. And I'm very much a believer of, like, I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, if you're not wearing it for a year, then you don't need it and get rid of it. And I don't believe that at all. And that doesn't make me a hoarder. That just makes me a person who believes that there are seasons of life, there are seasons and moods in your life where you tend to gravitate towards certain bags over others, but then you come back to it, and that time frame will really vary depending on the bag. And so that's kind of what happened to me, where I wore it for a while and then I didn't wear it for a long time, and I was like, oh, then I should sell it. And I would have had such regret if I sold this bag. Can you imagine, because of the price point that it is now? And to be honest, I don't even know how much it costs these days. So if you know the price today, please put it in the comments, because I might have a heart attack. It's really stupid. The price is really stupid. And at some point, we have to say stop. Okay, so the next bag that I almost sold was this bag. And for the same reason, like I had worn this for a while after I got it. This is the FENDI Can I bag. And I loved it and I wore it. But every time I wore it, this gold was so shiny that it was a little bit off-putting, and so it made me a little bit self-conscious for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, hello, I'm the gold girl. But it was so shiny that it was a little bit off-putting, and so I stopped wearing it for a while. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna sell this bag, even though I really, really love this bag. And actually, the size of this bag is so perfect. It's so functional, and you know, you just can't get mad at a functional bag. And it's got 2 compartments in here and a microfiber interior. And you know, it's a really good length on me. So, and I know this like little red is so minor, but I feel like it really adds a lot to the bag. So I did consider selling this, and then I was like, well, I'm probably not gonna get a lot of money for it, so let me just wait and whatever. So I never, again, like I never was in a hurry to sell it. And then one day, a couple of years ago, I was like totally in love with this bag, and I wore it all the time, so much that it actually made my 2022 most used handbag list. And I was so enamored with this bag again. And I don't know what happened, but a switch flicked for me where I was just like, no, I love this bag. I really, really love this bag. And I really love the gold. I love everything about it. Most of all, I love the size and functionality of it. So I wore it a lot in 2022. So I am so glad this was not sold and I held on to it. And it really goes to show that you can fall back in love with bags. Okay, so the next bag that I nearly sold was this bag, and this is a C by Chloe bag, and it is so freaking cute and adorable, and it's got these beautiful cherries all over it. It's such a fun, playful bag, and I absolutely adore it. I made a video on it. It's a crossbody bag, and it actually fits quite a lot considering the size and shape of this bag. Now, this was an impulse purchase, and I did make a video on it, and I really, really loved this bag. However, I found that I wasn't wearing it a ton, and I was like, is it worth keeping? I mean, it wasn't like a super expensive bag. It was probably only like maybe $200 or something, but I was like, well, if I don't wear it and if I'm not like gravitating towards it, then maybe I don't love it. And so I considered selling this for a little while, and then I was like, again, but I was never in a hurry to sell and post anything, and I wanted to wait and see how I would feel. And then over the summer, I noticed that there were certain dresses or outfits that only really, like, this flavor of cherry really worked with those outfits. And there was nothing else in my handbag collection that resembled anything this fun and this playful. Like, even though it's fun and playful, I don't find it childish. I still find it still has, you know, a mature taste to it. And I was like, there's nothing else that fulfills this role of playful. And so I do think it's really important that everyone has a playful bag in their collection, because that's what makes it fun, right? And sometimes you do want to have a playful look. So I am so glad I never sold this. Again, I wouldn't have gotten much for it anyway, but that's besides the point, because for me it was more about making space for things that you love. I think I just needed to get to know her a little bit better and figure out how she was going to fit in my wardrobe, because she's a little bit different. And actually she fits in great. So, you know, she found her place, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to find their way into your wardrobe, which is what happens with this one. Okay, last but not least was this bag. This is my small Gucci Ophidia top handle bag, and this was actually purchased because I was replacing this bag. Now, this is my very first Gucci bag. I think this was purchased in 2005. So super old, super worn. This is a canvas bag, but it's not a coated canvas, so there's quite a bit of wear on the corners, as you might be able to see. And I had worn this bag to death. Loved it so much. But even back then in 2005, I wanted the bag with the iconic webbing, the green and red webbing. And there was a version of this exact bag, except with the green and red webbing. And I didn't get it because it was more expensive. So I kind of settled, and I was like, I'll just get this one. And I knew that fast forward all these years, I was like, I'm gonna get a similar bag, but I want the webbing. And so I did. And so I replaced it with this, and this is kind of the bag that took that place. I still use that bag, by the way, for no fuss, primarily really dreary winter days. But anyway, this was the bag that I was supposed to replace it with, which I did, and I absolutely loved it, and I wore it a lot. I wore it a lot. There are some things I didn't like about it though, and it drove me a little bit crazy. So I am gonna do a review on this bag, which I have been meaning to do for a long time, and I will show you the pros and cons and stuff like that. But there was a time where I considered selling this because of some of the grievances or annoyances that I had on this bag. And I was just like, you know what, let me just hold on to it, because I can't bear to buy another Gucci bag with the webbing that was in a different silhouette, because I didn't know which one was going to be better than this. So I never sold it. And then I fell in love with it again. And actually, even though this is quite logo heavy, this is kind of a really, really good everyday bag. And so I had been finding that I was grabbing this a lot more than I used to. And so I was so glad that I never sold this. And, you know, again, I'm going to do a review on the pros and cons of this, what fits inside, and a lot more details on this. So stay tuned for that. But I think the moral of the story on this video is basically that you don't want to be too rash in making these decisions on selling bags that you feel like you're not wearing anymore. And I think a lot of that has to do with kind of recognizing the seasons of life, and sometimes you will gravitate towards some bags and sometimes you won't. And I think that's okay. And again, even if it's a relatively long period of time, for instance, longer than a year that you're not wearing a bag, I don't think that necessarily warrants you selling a bag, because I think sometimes what you'll find is that you'll come back to it and then you'll fall in love with it again. Sometimes, again, like the C by Chloe bag, you kind of have to get acquainted with it to kind of know how it's going to fit into your wardrobe. And that might not be immediately obvious, even though it's a beautiful bag that you love and that you know is functional. So I think that's important to keep in mind as well. But also, you have to mentally separate from a bag. And by that, I also think it's an emotional decision, just like anything else, right? Like, you have to emotionally separate from a bag and know that, like, if this is out of my collection, I'm gonna be 100% okay with it. And that might mean that you have to just put it away and pack it away, out of sight, out of mind, and see how you feel. Because if you don't miss it after a long period of time, and you know that there are a lot of other bags that will fill that void or give you that feeling, then I think that's a good indication to know that you're okay with separating from a bag and selling it. And you're probably not gonna have any kind of seller's remorse. So I think just mentally and emotionally separating, and even physically separating yourself from that bag is so important to do before you sell a bag. And don't just think off the cuff that, oh, I haven't worn it in a certain period of time, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Now, if you're really tight on space, or if you just downright hate the bag, then that's another story. If you hate the bag and it doesn't give you the energy that it should be giving you, then that's a good indication to get rid of the bag. But I think, aside from those kinds of instances, you really do have to emotionally separate from it for you to know that it's the right thing to do. And so I think sometimes we get a little bit trigger happy and being like, I just want to get rid of it. I want to recoup the money so I can buy something else. And sometimes that's okay. But if you just want to be careful about it and slow down a little bit, sometimes you'll come to a different conclusion. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you found it helpful. Maybe some of these things will kind of resonate with you if you're thinking about selling a bag. And so let me know what you think about this topic. And if you enjoy this video, then I would love if you hit the like button. That really helps me out. And if you enjoyed this video, then maybe go binge watch some of my other videos, and I will see you next time.